All right. Now I'm going a little bit early, but it has been a long day and I'm a little tired, so thought I'd go ahead and knock it out for everybody. I know a lot of you are joining me on Facebook, so that's okay. Um, it's the same feed for Cooper from the same event, so if you want to come in, that's fine. If not, that's okay too. No worries. Everything this week kind of starts all the way back over from the beginning. It really kind of, it's cool what the site core guys did. It kind of brings everything back to start. And it really kind of prepared us for a lot of things too. And a lot of the material that I have also kind of takes what we did in the past, the big stuff. We did the first round, and I kind of put it all together to kind of help us kind of see things a little bit deeper and see things a little bit differently. But nonetheless, science is a systematic approach for seeking and organizing knowledge about the natural world. That's kind of what separates what we do from a lot of other professions. We're not in the guesswork. We're actually, we do is scientific. Um, that's why it's important to have that functional relation and have all those things involved because it makes a big difference, and it really does. The purpose of science, the overall goal of science is to achieve a thorough understanding of phenomena under study. In this case, socially important change. Everything we're looking at is socially important change. I thought it was very interesting today when I was talking with a teacher, and she mentioned about her view is we use the word behavior, we think of problem behaviors. I'm like, no, we actually look at socially important behaviors and things that really help our kids, our clients. When we obtain knowledge from the world around us, um, that kind of helps us along the way as well. Science seeks to discover nature's truths, facts, and universal laws that exist and operate independent of the opinions and beliefs of any person or group, including the scientist. There's a reason why we try to use a scientific experiment and a scientific method. We try to disprove other theories. We use philosophical doubt. We question. We don't take everything as it is. But science teaches us, through that functional relation, through that scientific method, things that exist and why they exist. Um, a belief and an opinion, it can only take you so far, but you know, scientific method can take you a different journey. There's different types of scientific investigations yield knowledge enabling one or more of three levels of understanding. Our three levels of understanding: description, prediction, and control. It's right over here. Um, with description, we're trying to get a collection of facts. We're trying to get those collection of observed events that can be quantified, classified, examined with other known facts. We take all that information, we take all those facts, we take all those observed events, and we make a hypothesis. We make a guess for additional research. With a functional assessment, you take your observations, you take all your indirect, your direct, you take everything you put together, you make a hypothesis of what your function is going to be, and then you prove that or disprove that with your functional analysis. Prediction: in the presence of one event, another event occurs or fails to occur, um, based on repeated observations that reveal relationships between various events. You know, things that happen a lot, good or bad, happens or doesn't happen, gives us a good probability of those events occurring, gives us a good prediction of those things occurring. Demonstrates correlation between events, and it also enabled preparation. So, quick recap here. We have our collection of facts that help us determine that hypothesis. You know, when you look at the scientific method, I've been doing a little bit with my oldest with his homework. You look for a problem, you come up with a hypothesis, you create your method, and you prove it right or wrong. Isn't that what we pretty much do in ABA? We have an intervention, we have a behavior we're trying to, either direction, and we prove it one way or the other. Same thing. Prediction, we just these things that happen. One event correlates another. I put the birds up here because where I grew up in Kansas, in the winter or most of the fall, just the skies were covered with birds heading south. Well, that gives me a prediction. Every fall, when the weather starts to drop and the temperature starts to cool, then another event occurs. The pheasants and the birds, they all start to fly south. We did have a wildlife refuge nearby too that also kind of helped. Control is a huge thing. I don't want to understate it at all, but that's our functional relation. That's where we prove or disprove, our interventions, our theories, our problems, our scientific model. Control is the highest level of scientific understanding. This is where those functional relations are derived. Once again, the homework stuff for virtual learning kind of helped out for tonight because we've been doing dependent variable and we also been doing independent variable. And I've been telling him, what are we trying to change? And how are we changing it? And the independent variable, the IV, is what we're using to create that change. And then, of course, we have the change of the dependent variable is unlikely to be a result of other extraneous factors, compounding variables. I think what we kind of gathered the last couple of weeks where extraneous and confounding are really kind of alike. There are things that we need to control when we do our experiment. There are things we need to control when we put our things into action. Can't always do it. It's easier in a clinic, it's easier in a lab, and not so much in the natural world. But we need to try our best to control those variables. Events can only be correlated and also nearly impossible to factor out all other possible causes. We're trying to hit that high level here. Let's go into our attitudes of science. I also took some things from Pass the Big in here, and I took some things that we did from our last installment when we did all this away, all this studying, and kind of threw it in there to kind of put it all together a little bit here. Our assumptions of science, we had determinism, empiricism, just starting out. We have, I know I should know the rest of them, D or PP, determinism, empiricism, parsimony, philosophical doubt, replication, and I should know the other one. My brain can't get going tonight. Determinism is everything happens for a reason. I think when you work in a school like I do, and several schools like I do, you really start to kind of see that happening so much. Because everyone always says it just happened and he just did it for no reason. Well, everything happens for a reason. And I try to tell a lot of my staff, as adults, we do things for a reason. And it really makes a big difference when we start to look at determinism, that cause and that effect. And the universe is a lawful place. When you look at the rain, there's a lot of cause and effect there. It started raining. What was the effect? I grabbed an umbrella. The weather's starting to cool down a little bit here in Arkansas. What's the effect? We might wear a jacket or some warmer clothes. But everything happens for a reason. Empiricism is basically just the facts. We need all this information, all these facts to help us compile what's going on. There's a reason why we want data. There's a reason why we take data, because we need the facts and we want the facts. When a police officer makes an interview or a detective, what is he looking for? The facts. He's looking for all the information. It's important. It helps determine that decision. Experimentation. Don't hold that one against me, but I got most of them. BDS also looks at selectionism as another attitude of science. Just want to throw that one at you. Experimentation is a basic strategy we just pretty much talked about, and it takes an experiment. You have your problem, you set up your method, you set up your experiment, and you create your hypothesis. What do you think is going to happen? And then you prove it right or prove it wrong. We have our dependent variable, we have our independent variable. In our case, our independent variable will be our intervention. We're trying to show that it's effective, and our dependent variable will be the rate or something we're trying to decrease or increase. Functional analysis has two meanings in behavior analysis literature. It denotes that functional relation, and it also is widely known for describing experimental methodology for determining environmental variables. A lot of stuff happening there, but for most of us in the learning process, from what we've seen, is it helps us to determine a functional relation. It also has an AKA. It's also known as experimental analysis. This is on a slide pulled from another study that we did. Kind of has some different word drilling going on. We're manipulating variables to see the effects. We're also we're proving everything is working. We're hitting that highest level of control. And then we hit replication. I think of replication. I mentioned it earlier about the Food Network thing, and they have all these recipes, and everyone's repeating these recipes, and they're either doing them the same or they're adding a little bit to it. But those recipes are so detailed written, they're able to be replicated. Well, let's look at us for a second. All these papers that we write and research articles that we read and all these things that we see about all these awesome, amazing evidence-based practices, well, we're repeating them. So it's important that you understand how important it is to be the technical aspect of it, but make sure everything can be repeated. Replication is the primary method in which scientists determine the reliability and the usefulness of their findings and discover their ability and usefulness of their findings and discover their mistakes. That's Johnson and Pennypacker. We're looking for the reliability. Can it stand the test of time? Can that recipe stand the test of time? Can it be replicated over and over again and create that reliability? Replication is the primary reason science is a self-correcting enterprise. That's what Skinner said, and it makes plenty of sense. You keep doing it over and over again, you're bound to get it better, or you're bound to get it right. Who am I to say that I'm always right? This is a thought. Think about all those recipes you see from Food Network, and you prepared and replicated those meals. What did you discover? Mistakes, improvements, errors? What do we do? We did something. Parsimony. BDS was kind of really cool about this because they really kind of broke it down a little bit also. But at the end of the day, it's the simplest theory. It's the simplest logical theory. Had a client we were testing for to identify if he had characteristics of autism. Bad morning, rough morning. Well, could it be earache? Could it be not feeling well? Could it be something else? So when you start to rule out all those simple, logical things that are going on, it makes more sense. There's a lot of other things going on, but look for the simplest theory. Sometimes we get swept up in the whole, well, it's got to be this, it's got to be this, it's got to be this. What's the simplest theory? You could adapt this to your regular life, not just applied behavior analysis. I'm going to look at philosophical doubt. You got to have a healthy skepticism. Do you believe everything that you hear? Facebook, for example. Do you believe everything you hear on Facebook? Do you believe everything you hear on the internet? No, we're skeptical. We have doubt. We don't believe everything. We don't take everything as fact. Well, that should be the same kind of idea in our field. We need to continually question the truthfulness of what everyone always says is fact. Skinner and Watson and so forth, and Bear and all Risley and the gang, they didn't take everything for what it was. They want to keep moving forward. Scientists, or even us, sometimes you got to put away what you've always thought was right and really kind of be open for new discoveries, be open for new ideas. It makes a big difference. Questioning things and not taking everything for what it's worth. Like I said, the Facebook thing. Do you believe everything you hear on Facebook? Do you believe everything you see on Facebook? No, you have doubts. You have skepticism. Well, apply that to everything else. Science's systematic approach to understanding natural phenomena as evidenced by description, prediction, control. Well, I'm going to stop right there because when you look at this definition, it really breaks apart a lot of different things going on. Several things we've already talked about. That description of getting all the facts and getting all the information and then making the hypothesis. Prediction, look at the cause and effect, looking at correlation between two things. And then control, that functional relation, that highest level. And then then it goes into that it relies on determination. The universe is a lawful and ordered place as its fundamental assumption. Empiricism, getting facts as its prime directive. Experimentation, experiments as its basic strategy. Replication, to demonstrate repeatability as its necessary requirement for believability. Parsimony, the simplest logical theory as its conservative value. And philosophical doubt, skepticism as its guiding science. And you put those words in there and you really peel that onion, it's kind of cool. The history has a few more differences than last time I came across this little adventure. Like I said before, I've taken some Past the Big, taken some Mayer. Mayer didn't go very historic. He didn't go real deep in the first chapter. Nothing like Hooper. Hooper went deep. Past the Big went deep with that nice little timeline too. So I try to include some stuff that Karina did with us in the Past the Big workshop we had back in May, and just, and maybe it's just making more sense to me. Talking about it more, studying with you guys more, read it more. I don't know. It's just maybe it's just makes more sense that way. I don't know. Barbara, I just went early. That's all it was. It's not a big deal. I got it recorded. We're good. I just responding. Pavlov started the whole, didn't really start the whole thing, but he started with respondent conditioning dogs. He started a stimulus pairing. He paired that food with that bell, with that I want to say bell. It might have been something else. And then that bell became a conditioned stimulus. And we're able to take away the bell, and then we take away the food, and we hit that bell, and now that conditioned stimulus has power. It has now been paired. He came first, and he published this study about that. And then Watson came right behind him, and several others. But the 1900s, we had this, mentalism boom, this psychology boom. Freud with the id and the ego and loving your mom and all these things. People were starting to ask questions about the mentalism approach to explain behavior. All our inner thoughts, all of our inner circular fictions and all that explanatory fictions, everything inside to explain behavior. That's when we started having hypothetical constructs, exploratory fictions, and circular reasonings. All these different things under the umbrella of mentalism really starting to take off. Mentalism is, basically what it says. It's that inner mental dimension. Can't talk tonight. And it's mostly on the inside. All those inner thoughts, all those mental things going on. A hypothetical construct is a presumed but unobserved process or entity. It's like the Freud's id, the ego, the superego. And I put in these to kind of help it make more sense to me, at least. Your cognitive processes, your drive, your free will, those processes that are unobserved underneath your skin, those inner dimensions that drive things that we can't see. I think we've all had our fair share of explanatory fiction. This fictitious or hypothetical variable that takes the form of another name. He's doing this, so he has to be this. He's doing this, so he has to be this. That's circular reasoning there as well, but it's just trying to explain everything. It contributes to a functional account or understanding of phenomenon as intelligence or kind of awareness, as explanations for why an organism pushes the level when the light is on and the food is available, but does not push the level. A little bit of Cooper right there, it sounds like. But nonetheless, mental is inner thought processes. Those imaginary constructs, they're, once again, looking at a hypothetical construct from something else. They're presumed, they're there. Your drive is there, but you can't see it. Your free will is there, but you can't see it. Your intelligence is there. Or sometimes your craziness is there, but it's not observable. Explanatory fiction is like it gives a solution to that behavior. He knows how to manipulate me. He knows how to drive me crazy. He knows what he's doing. Well, he doesn't. He doesn't. There's not always that reasoning going on, but nonetheless, that's what we're thinking. He wants to upset me, so he jumps on the couch. He wants to make my life miserable, so he doesn't do the dishes. This and this. And then we have a cause and effect that are both from the. Here's my circular reasoning. He's autistic, so he has to be. He's antisocial. He doesn't talk, so he has to be autistic. He's hyper, so he has to be ADHD. That's why I put this slide in there, because the Cooper stuff is so technical, but in the past, the big stuff made more sense. And then the Mayer stuff kind of brought some stuff home too. I hope this slide, at least it is for me, making more sense. So once again, hypothetical construct, those presume, but you don't see them, like your free will, intelligence, explanatory fiction. It gives a solution to the behavior. We're trying to explain that behavior away. He's trying to manipulate me, so that's why he doesn't want to do his work. And then circular reasoning, we're trying to identify based on the same information. The science of behavior analysis has three interrelated domains. We have the philosophy part, which we did spend a lot of time last week. Great discussion. Your basic research and your applied research. Behaviorism is your philosophy part. It's the philosophy of the behavior. And your research is your EAB, your experimental analysis of behavior. And then your applied part would be your ABA. Now let's get to Watson. We'll do some Watson, then we'll do some Skinner, and we'll do some more terms, and then we'll have a good evening. John Watson was a stimulus response guy. He presented a stimulus, and then you had your response. He started the way for methodological behaviorism. The, the modern methodological behaviorism, they know there's private events, they understand those things, but it's still what you see is what you get. But John Watson started in 1913. His work was highly influenced by Pavlov, obviously. Pavlov was stimulus response makes a lot of sense. He did work a little Albert. I'm not going to get a whole debate on the moral or the ethical reasons behind that. It is absolutely terrible what he put that little kid through. But nonetheless, he believed he could take individuals and sculpt them into certain things based on that stimulus response psychology theory. He focused mostly on observable events, and he did not believe in private events. Yeah, the little Albert thing, that just puts you to, puts the whole argument to bed on the whole stimulus response thing, the things that he was pairing and the things that he was trying to evoke. Watson argued that the proper subject matter for psychology was not the states of mind, but processes that are observable behavior. So you have this trend of mentalism, psychology, everything is a state of mind. And then, wait a minute, behavior is observable, things that we see. So the objective study of behavior as a natural science should consist of direct observation of the relationships between environmental stimuli and the responses they evoke. It kind of helps kick off the whole Skinner debate a little bit later on, but nonetheless, stimulus response, SR. He made bold claims concerning human behavior. I was trying to say a minute ago, you give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, in my own specified world, and I'll guarantee I'll take anyone at random and train them to be any type of specialist I might select. I mean, he was very big on environment. The environment molds those responses. That's why he really believed that he could train them up in any kind of specialist. And Skinner came in, and Skinner was a huge EAB guy. He went to the lab and he did all his lab work and went from there. He began the publication of the behavior of organisms in 1938. And then he started talking about respondent and operant behavior. Respondent behavior, those reflexes, those unlearned behaviors that we do, that are brought out sometimes in the next chapter of Cooper to kind of protect us in a way too. When our eyes water or our eyes blink or other respondent reflexes. Respondent behavior is elicited or it's brought out. For example, when you have a bright light and your eyes blink or your eyes contract, we have that reflex. You go outside and it's really bright, it's really sunny, or a stove is hot and you touch it by accident and you flinch back. That's a reflex. These involuntary behaviors that occur whenever the eliciting stimulus is present. You have stimulus as in super hot, touch it, then you have your response, your reflex. He challenged Watson. He challenged that model. He stated that it could explain a lot of what's going on with behavior. So behavior is changed less by the stimuli that precede it and more by the consequences that follow it. So that's when he came up with the three-term model. Watson was stimulus response, and Skinner's now saying, okay, I have my antecedent, my setting event, I have my behavior, then I have my consequence, and that consequence shapes that future behavior as well. And leads us into operant behavior. It's not listed by that stimuli. This is kind of a consequence-driven deal. SR is more antecedent-driven, and operant is more consequence-driven. That's why it's not listed by preceding stimuli, but influenced by those changes that we've learned. I hear all the time, learn behaviors, learn behaviors, learn behavior. It's a learned behavior. I hate to break your heart, but just about everything we know is a learned behavior. We have been conditioned for so many different things. Most powerful contribution to our understanding of behavior was in his discovery and experimental analysis of the effects of consequences on behavior. Um, he got us into the positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment. Those consequences teach us a history of learned behavior. They're emitted, they're evoked. And here's the big difference too. They're voluntary. Respondent was involuntary. It was unlearned. We just knew to do it. And now with operant behavior, we're volunteering these actions because we've learned over time the benefits or consequences, or the other way around too. Experimental analysis of behavior. It's basically, in a nutshell, the lab part of it. It's a natural science approach to the study of behavior as a subject matter in its own right, founded by Skinner. The methodological features include rate of response as a basic dependent variable, repeated or continuous measurement of clearly defined response class, within subject experimental comparisons instead of group design. That single subject thing is a game changer. You have a big old huge group and you have the average. Well, single subject, each person in the group is tested for analysis. Visual analysis of graph data instead of statistical interference, and emphasis on describing functional relations between behavior controlling variables in the environment over formal theory testing. A lot of stuff there. A lot of stuff. Here's another one of his contributions. Radical behaviorism. Now Skinner's thinking, hey, what if we include private events along with these behaviors that are observable? Let's throw it all together and have radical behavior. So radical behaviorism is that ABC form. We have our stimulus, our response, and I want to say stimulus. A thoroughgoing form of behaviorism that attempts to understand all human behaviors, including thoughts and feelings, in terms of controlling in the history of our learned behaviors and our species. When you do the BDS, if you haven't already done them, that's where I put the SRS from. I got that from. And then we kind of got a review last week, or maybe the week before, with the Psych Core guys with the SOR, that stimulus organism thing going on too. That's your methodological behaviorism. We have 4 branches. We have our behaviorism, aka conceptually analysis of behavior. Just like before, we just said it's the same thing, just different slide. We're looking at the philosophy parts of behavior, the theoretical, the historical, the ethical issues, this philosophical part. Then you have ABA. This is where we're trying to create change for socially significant behaviors. Probably why it's a growing field. Behavior service delivery is, it's ABA principles and non-ABA settings. OBM would be a good example because it's ABA, it's behavior analysis in Google, mixed martial arts, boxing, sports. It's just everywhere. Animal training. When you look at SeaWorld to just train your dog, there's a lot of different stuff going on there using behavior analysis principles. Then, of course, once again, our experimental analysis, the lab. Research is all done in the lab. Nothing is natural. Applied behavioral analysis is natural, but EAB is not natural. We have pragmatism. I had to pull some more information on this one because it was a topic that I understand, but I can't go sideways and front backwards and all that stuff too. But it's a philosophical position that the truth value of a statement and is a function of how well the statement promotes action. Well, let's break it down some more. The relationship between the setting and the behavior is because of the consequence, that ABC part of it. Um, Everything has a reason, everything has a relationship. It focuses on answering questions. How do things come to be as they are? Um, and it also ties into parsimony, how the ABC ties all together in the big picture, this whole big scheme of things. While we have our setting events, then we have our behavior, then we have our it just kind of ties everything together, and it looks at relationships. It just puts truth to how everything kind of pulls together. Methodological behaviorism. I put the SR in there because it is basically our stimulus response. Um, you could argue SOR, the stimulus organism response part as well. But we're looking basically at publicly observable behaviors. Everything we can see. We're not worried about private events. We're looking at only things that we could see. When you really start to break down behavior also, and I think we'll do that next week, you're looking at like action, things you could do. We're not looking at feelings so much. We're really breaking down those action verbs. Observable, measurable behaviors. Applied behavior analysis can be traced to the 1959 publication of Allen and Michael's paper entitled The Psychiatric Nurse as a Behavioral Engineer. And then we go in the 1960s, and many researchers began to apply principles of behavior in an effort to start improving socially important behavior. But they had a ton of problems in the beginning. Not everything was just cookie cutter and just was perfect. They had a lot of problems. That's science. Um, that's philosophical doubt, not taking everything as it is and keep trying to move forward. The basic methods for reliably improving student performance developed from those early applied behavior analysis, providing the foundation for behavioral approaches for curriculum design, instructional methods, classroom management, and the generalization and maintenance of learning that continue to be used decades later. That part is huge because we use a lot of these things in how we design curriculum. There's probably 1,000 ABA curriculums out there, but people turn to that because they know we're evidence-based, they know the science part of it, and they know what we do. We just gotta understand that back. The instructional methods, the classroom management parts, those things are big. The group contingencies and your consequence-based strategies, your antecedent-based strategies, all those basic methods tie into those concepts for those three things. And of course, your ultimate goal in serving a client, a student, generalization and maintenance. Can they do that skill somewhere else? And can they maintain that skill when you're not around? In the 1960s and 70s, many universities started to develop ABA programs. Now there's tons of them, but there are still universities and areas that are still behind the curve. Where I'm at, we're just now picking up steam. University of Arkansas has a program. We had a private university that just developed a program. So we're not where other states are at, but we're trying to get there because we know the need. But the 1960s and 70s, that's when things started to kind of pick up pace. Through research and teaching, the faculty made major contributions to the rapid growth of the field. There's several universities I didn't even mention because there's the list. They made contributions. They probably have, like the ones today that had stuff on campus and did research and did studies and did all that stuff. And it added to the growth of our programs. The 7 dimensions of applied behavior analysis. If you don't know them by now, then I don't know what's going on. We start with applied. Applied are those socially significant behaviors. We're not going to teach a kid to play the clarinet. We're not going to teach a kid to iron his underwear. We're going to teach behaviors that have importance. Most of the time we think about social skills, academic skills in your daily living, because those are important. Those are socially significant behaviors. This also looks at our commitment to affecting improvements in behaviors that enhance people's lives. Our goal is not to make someone else's life better. Our goal is to enhance our clients' lives. If they don't have proper social skills, proper conversation skills, they need to be taught those skills. If there's academic skills, obviously we need to have academics. I mean, we may not all be scientists, we may not all be presidents, or we may not all be whatever, but we need to have academic skills, the basic understanding. We need to have day-to-day skills, how to get through our day. I think every one of us see on Facebook the push for social, emotional, or vocational trades, or bring shop back, or bring whatever back. What things are we concerned with? Socially significant problems. But we spend so much time worried about autism or worried about this. A lot of people involved. But nonetheless, daily living, we look at toileting, hand washing, and other adaptive skills. Language, we spend a lot of time with requesting, identifying, conversation skills, basic communication. I definitely agree with Nick. We shoot for the moon when it comes to language skills with our clients. They deserve to work their way up the same way we did. We have our behavioral objective, our behavioral dimension. It's what's the behavior in need? What are we studying? The precise measurement of the actual behavior in need of improvement. What we're trying to change. Yeah, we need it in observable and measurable terms, but what behavior are we trying to change? What behavior are we looking at? Beowulf and Risley also made 3 important points to this dimension. They also said the behavior must be chosen in the need of improvement. We're not looking to make teacher's life better or this person. It needs to help and benefit that client. It must be measurable. And also, when changes in behavior observed during an investigation, it is necessary to ask whose behavior has changed. Who are we changing? Analytic. This goes right back down to what we talked about earlier. Experimentation, the experiment side, the science side of it, that functional relation. This demonstrates experimental control of the occurrence or non-occurrence of behavior. We're looking for that functional relation. The analytic dimension enables ABA and not only to demonstrate effectiveness, but also provide proof of functional and replicable relations between the interventions it recommends and socially significant outcomes. This is that proof, that scientific proof part. We're not just saying, well, I think, this is great and let's try it. We got functional relation, we got proof. It works. Technological, I mentioned it earlier a little bit. That thorough written description, very detailed. When you read a study or you read a paper, they're very detailed because they want to be replicated. When you look at a recipe, it's very detailed, so it can be replicated. When you do an intervention or a study, it needs to be detailed so someone else can replicate it. Conceptually systematic. This is a big one. I think I always overlooked it when I was studying, and now it's kind of a bigger deal to me. We're not looking for a grocery list of strategies. In my field where I work at, oh my gosh, we love these lists. We love all these lists of we're going to use a token board, and we're going to use this, 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 and we're going to use weighted vests, or we're going to use this, or we're going to use social stories, and we're going to try this. Let's depend on research. Let's depend on behavior principles. And then that makes them systematic. There's a reason why they're evidence-based, and there's a reason why they work. And there's a reason why they're referred to as ABA stuff. There's a reason, because they're conceptually systematic. Better enable research consumer to derive other similar procedures from the same principles. All of our procedures are driven from ABA principles, ABA stuff. Beowulf and Risley also said there's a strong rationale. They provide a strong rationale for the use of conceptual systems. They said relating specific procedures to basic procedures, relating specific procedures to basic principles might enable the research consumer to derive other similar procedures. We take what we learned, we take all these procedures, take all these concepts, and we may have a similar way of doing it. Conceptual systems are needed if a technology is to become an integrated discipline instead of a collection of tricks. Their word is a collection of tricks. Mine is a grocery list of strategies. And you know what I'm talking about. Those people that have the same 5 to 10 strategies, that's their bread and butter. When I first became a behavior specialist a couple of years ago, we had a list. I kid you not, a list. And that's what we brought to IEP meetings, and that's what we talked about. And then last year, I was like, I don't know. And then I've learned that's why we do a functional analysis, a functional assessment. That's why the PFA is just growing, because we don't want a grocery list. We want an effective intervention. Not saying those don't work. We just need to figure the why so it can be effective. This is the other dimension. Is your treatment effective? Is your intervention effective? If you're not using a grocery list of strategies and you're being very specific and you're targeting what the client actually needs, you're going to see improvement. If it's not working, do you make changes? This improves behavior sufficiently to produce practical results for the participants. Improvements in behavior must reach clinical or social significance. Is it effective? And then we have generality, basically generalization. Do we have behavior changes that last over time? Do they appear in other environments? Hand washing, for example. Does it happen at school and at home? But we have other characteristics of ABA. We have accountable, created by a focus on accessible environmental variables that reliably influence behavior. Accountability. We have public, visible, explicit, and straightforward, of value across a broad spectrum of fields. Public is basically what it means, public. Private's not always available, but public's very visible. Doable, no prohibitable, complicated, or whatever. A variety of individuals are able to implement principles and interventions. Are your interventions doable? Can you do them? Does it involve more learning, or are your procedures able to do? Is it empowering? Provides practitioners with real tools that work, raises confidence and increases confidence for future challenges. That sounds like a definition of empowering. Raises confidence. I think ABA, we need to do is raise confidence, raise that buy-in. Optimistic, possibilities for each individual. We may have our hands full with inappropriate and problematic behaviors, but we need to have possibilities. Detect small improvements, the small battles, the small victories. Positive outcomes yield a more optimistic attitude about future success. And that is it. Like I said, I pulled some stuff from Mayer, Cooper, and some Past the Big to kind of make it kind of come full circle. I'm sorry I lost a lot of y'all by doing this an hour early, but it's just been a long week. It's just been a long week so far. I am recording it. I'm going to stop it.